Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk finally addressed the elephant in the room. Former President Donald Trump's Twitter ban will be lifted under his watch.
It was not correct to ban Donald Trump. I think that was a mistake because it alienated a large part of the country and did not ultimately result in Donald Trump not having a voice. He is now going to be on Truth Social, as will a large part of the right in the United States, and so I think this could end up being, frankly, worse than having a single forum where everyone can debate.
Christianné, what's your take on that? I mean, as the social media world has fractured, people have dived into these individual platforms like Getter, like Truth Social, like Twitter, and they almost self-select themselves into these echo chambers. How do you fight that?
Well, I'll just comment on Elon. Actions speak louder than words. And until Elon's acquisition of Twitter goes through in the next couple of months, that is yet to be seen if he's going to honor that statement. But I think the underlying question is, will Trump return to Twitter? Trump has publicly said he will not, and that he wants to stay exclusive to his competing enterprise, Truth Social. But on the topic of the Twitter takeover, what I found actually the most interesting from the reporting this week was that Jack Dorsey came out and publicly supported this comment that Twitter should have never indefinitely suspended the president's account. And we've also learned from reporting this week that Elon Musk reached out to Jack Dorsey and spoke to him about sticking around as a co-owner and keeping his stake within the company if Elon's deal goes through. So he now has a vested interest in seeing Elon's acquisition go through.
Do we believe in Dorsey as this figure who maybe has some amount of guilt having watched what his company has done? Or is he just kind of playing along so he can squeeze back in? What's happening there?
I think you could argue he always wanted to uphold the principles of free speech at Twitter, and you could say that he was stuck between a rock and a hard stone with the board, as he's publicly come out and said that he was put in very difficult positions. Right. But at the end of the day, he was the CEO of Twitter when they decided to indefinitely suspend President Trump's account. And obviously, this has been an interesting story to follow. But I think the big point is that Elon and Jack, if this deal goes through, have a very big uphill battle ahead of them, because what's wrong at Twitter is a cultural issue. It's not a technological one.
To that point, let's talk about this for a second. He does, in that interview, Musk goes on to say that Twitter obviously has a left-wing bias. Surprise. Twitter employees and their immediate families donated $193,000 to Biden's campaign, compared to the entire Twitter family donating about $3,000 to Trump.
Well, it's like 90% to Democratic candidates, 95% to Democratic candidates and not Republican candidates. And now that Truth is slowly starting to roll out, I've had conversations with former Congressman Devin Nunes, and your reach, conservative members' reach on Truth is like 7 times what it is on Twitter, because behind the scenes, the tech people at Twitter are not allowing that to get out, or doing the things that they can technologically to restrict conservative voices and to amplify liberal voices. And then you can see it in the numbers. When the week that Elon was talking about taking it over, suddenly our Twitter likes and followers jumped like 7,000 people. And there's obviously a correlation there as to what's happening behind the scenes, and they're not wanting the American people to see how biased and how restrictive they've been at limiting conservative voices.
Wasn't there an effort to try and freeze some of the information over there at Twitter? Was that a directive from Musk, or did someone in Congress propose that?
We in Judiciary Committee sent them a cease and desist letter and a stay letter to make sure that they keep all of their records and communications. Right. Because obviously, once we get the gavels back, we'll have the ability to subpoena these individuals and do investigations of our own.
How confident are you that they'll actually abide by the subpoenas?
Well, these days it's hard to hide things technologically. So when you start subpoenaing servers and the type of things that our people can go into and get the information, it's very hard to hide communications these days.
We'll have buckets of popcorn waiting when you guys start doing that.